Oh man. Yeah, 3 days. Still wearing the same shirt. Don't worry though. I'm filming this all at once because I don't know when I'm going to get a chance to film like this again. So I'm trying to get as much knocked out of the way as possible. But anyway, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to part 3 of What If Ash Caught Latias. Now, before we get in today's episode, I'm going to need you to take a look at this analytical stat bar right here and make sure you're subscribed, because if you're not, that would be a bummer. And it helps the channel grow and gets us to a larger audience. But anyway, with all that being said, we're picking up with the Battle Frontier. Now, this was a massive event in the anime for Ash. And the reason I say that is because we got to really see him come into his own in this part of the anime. It's still technically part of Gen 3, but there's a lot of things they establish in this gen. But going into this gen, we start off with Ash returning to Kanto. And once again, he's separated from all of his friends. They've all gone their own separate ways for now. But Ash immediately arrives back in Viridian City, to where he meets Agatha, the Elite Four member. And most people say she's a ghost type specialist. I say she's a poison type specialist, just because all of her Pokemon share the poison type. But we won't get into that. Anyway, with that aside, they establish that there's going to be a new gym leader in Viridian City soon, and Ash ends up having a one-on-one battle with her. In the normal timeline, he uses Pikachu, which I don't see changing here. He still has his whole Hoenn team that he had before. And let's recap. Pikachu, Swellow, Latias, Sceptile, Torkoal, and Glalie. The one odd man out, Corphish. If you don't know why Ash doesn't have Corphish, go check out the last one. But anyway, I would still say the battle between Gengar and Pikachu still plays out the same here. However, it is a hint closer than what it was before. Pikachu's at a bit of a higher level because of having now Latias around, and Ash was a little bit more focused on training this time around. But it still loses. However, Ash meets a very important character here, Scott, the president of the Battle Frontier, and he invites Ash to come compete against his Frontier Brains, trainers that are just as strong as the Elite Four members. Now, on the surface, the Battle Frontier seems like a typical gym challenge or Orange Island adventure, but it's really not. The trainers here are a different caliber, and we see that with how things play out. But first, we gotta add a couple of people back to the roster and make a couple of team changes for Ash. So Ash would arrive back in Palatown, and we would see a reignitement of an old rivalry of Latias and Bayleaf. Because the last time Ash saw Bayleaf, he didn't have Latias with him. And Bayleaf thought that Ash went off to the Hoenn region without Latias, so it was okay with him going. But now that Latias is back, they gotta fight it out again. But that doesn't change the fact that Ash is going to leave Torkoal and Glalie behind here. And he's going to enter the Battle Frontier with a team of 4. For now. And from here, Brock, May, and Max rejoin. So, the gang's back together. They're traveling through Kanto. Oh, and we also got to throw Misty on there because she makes a brief stop in to say hi and how's it going, and possibly have some sort of girlfriend rivalry with May, with Ash. I don't know. That's up to the individual person. But anyway, we're going to get far beyond that point. We come to find out that the first battle facility is right outside Cerulean City, the Battle Factory. And Nolan is the head of the Battle Factory. So Ash and his new team head that way. But before they get there, they get sidetracked when Phanpy decided that it wanted to tag along. Because, you know, it didn't really quite get that much of a Johto journey with Ash. It's had a little bit of time to mature, and it's ready to step out of the spotlight of a mascot and step into a full-team brawny battler. Which I can't blame it. It sat around for a year, so why not want to do a little bit more? Anyway, let's get to the first battle facility, the Battle Factory. Here, we meet Nolan and learn that one of his ace Pokemon is Articuno. On the surface, this doesn't seem out of the ordinary for Ash because he's got Latias. But I still think that Ash would make the call for Charizard. One of the things that the Battle Frontier did right is they allowed Ash to use some of his older Pokemon and call some of his heavy hitters, like Charizard. So here, the battle will still play out the same. There's no reason to change it. Charizard would still struggle to get the win, but in the end, prove that it's got the better endurance compared to Articuno, earning Ash his first Frontier symbol. Next, we head on over to the battle arena. Now, Greta is a fighting type trainer, but her battle style is more along the lines of a sumo style. But instead of pushing them out of the ring, they just get flattened or until they don't have anything left. Now, the Pokemon she uses for this is going to be Medicham and Hariyama, just like in the original. Ash, on the other hand, well, he's got a couple of calls to make. You see, normally you use Snorlax and Grovyle here, but Grovyle has evolved into a Sceptile. So it really wouldn't do it any good to further its growth story-wise to have Sceptile battle here. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Sceptile shouldn't battle here, but what I'm saying is I'd like to give the spotlight to somebody else, and we're going to go with Snorlax and Bayleaf instead. You see, I think Bayleaf could pull its weight just as much as Grovyle did. Bayleaf did end up winning the fighting type gym in the Johto region, so it is familiar with fighting type battles. And it does have a bit of a stubborn streak, so I think it would prove to be very, very good in a sumo style match. Don't get me wrong. In the end, I still think Snorlax and its 18 moveset would win, and that would earn Ash his second symbol. Now we head into the next battle facility. And that battle facility just so happens to be the Battle Pipe. This is where we meet Lucy, the Serpent Queen. Now, we have a very important evolution that is supposed to happen before the Battle Pipe, which would be Phanpy. Unfortunately, Phanpy isn't as strong as it was in the canon when it started out on this journey. So, it's still going to be a Phanpy. That's going to leave Ash to make a major change here, and I think we all know who's going to come in. Dos Old Reliable, Latias, and Pikachu. Now, I think Pikachu is obvious because it's a Milotic, and that thing seems to have this love-hate relationship with the Water Serpent, but Latias would stem from the fact that Seviper is poison, and Latias is a Psychic Dragon, so it just makes sense to put it there. None of Ash's other Pokemon really stand a chance as far as typing-wise concerned, but we'll get into that later. Anyway, I think Latias would pretty much dominate the battle with Seviper. I mean, yeah, Lucy is an Elite 4 level trainer, and her Pokemon are stronger than others, but at the end of the day, a Legendary Psychic versus a normal Poison Snake isn't really going to stand that much of a chance. So Ash would end up taking it. But I think when we get to Milotic, we'd probably see a swing of change. Ash would try to keep in Latias here just to keep the momentum going, but at this point, Pikachu's trying to learn Volt Tackle. So he would want to try and save Pikachu for as long as possible. This would drive Latias to end up losing to Milotic. Lucy's Milotic is somewhat of a tank, like most in the series. And this is the first time that Latias has had to fare against one, and I would say that even though it is stronger, I think Lucy's has the ability Marvel Scale, so do with that what you will. But in the end, Pikachu would still get the win, giving Ash his third symbol. Now, we're going to head over to the fourth battle facility against the Dome Ace, Tucker. Tucker is a very unique character in the Battle Frontier, and what I mean by that is he's on wand level of Flamboyant, which there's nothing wrong with. He's also a former winner of the Grand Festival, and he values tactics over anything, hence the name of his symbol. In this battle, we see him using Arcanine versus Swampert. In the original, Ash used Corphish and Swellow, which I don't know how they won. I still don't find that battle believable, to be honest with you. But we're getting off track, so we're just going to get back onto the story. In this one, he would end up using Swellow and Latias. And honestly, their airborne tactics, because they've been training for so long together, would be damn near perfect. I mean, you wouldn't really be able to see them having any mistakes in their battling style. You see, before you had one land and one sky-based Pokemon trying to work together. And then you end up getting the whole riding on Swellow's back with Corphish only because it hasn't evolved and it's small enough to fit there, but that's beside the point. Here, you could really get a sense for how Swellow has learned from Latias in its ability to move fast. And in turn, you could really get a sense for how Latias has improved over its time since it first began with Ash. And the two would end up dazzling the crowd with high impact moves like Aerial Ace and Luster Purge, stuff like that. Latias would end up being a heavy hitter, and in the end, they would both just be able to overwhelm, outpower, and outspeed both Swampert and Arcanine, wrapping it up to give Ash his 4th Frontier symbol. Yeah, Ash is kind of speed running the Battle Frontier at this point, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing either. He hasn't really had any challenge. You see, when you have to battle Elite 4 level trainers, the challenge is supposed to be that they're Elite 4 level. But remember, when Ash went to Hoenn, he got the chance to battle 3 of the Elite 4. 4 technically, because he fought Drake in a non-official match. But with that being said, he's faced this caliber before, so it's not really anything new to him. Unfortunately, this does go to his head a little bit, and this is where we start seeing Ash kind of struggle. You see, Ash doesn't really have to worry about the whole heartbreak thing with Sceptile when it was a Grovyle and then it evolves. That doesn't really happen here. It's already a Sceptile, so there's no point of even including that arc. But we do have to talk about the arc of Spencer. You see, Spencer is very much a naturalist, old man, hermit, lives in the woods type. He very much believes in the power of nature, and his Pokemon reflect it. I mean, just look at the battle. Using the Whirlwind to power up his moves, Sceptile ended up getting caught in one. I mean, just from start to finish, Spencer proved that he was actually a powerful opponent. And Ash pulled a Hail Mary out of the end, facing a type that Sceptile had an advantage of, and he learned Solar Beam, and the clouds just so happened to open up. Anyway, we're getting way past ourselves. Here, I think because Spencer is more of a defensive type trainer, things might get a little bit tougher for Ash. He still has Shiftry and Claydol and his Venusaur, but I think Ash would make a couple of team changes here. First, I think Ash would end up not using Swellow. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, we're just going to throw Latias in there. No, we're not doing that. We're actually going to bring back Cyndaquil for this one, just because Ash realizes after working in Hoenn that his Johto team was really lacking. So he ends up using Cyndaquil. Now, Cyndaquil would end up being the first one out against Shiftry, and unfortunately end up causing a fire in the forest, forcing the battle to be on hold so that way they can put it out. But then they move to a more open platform where Cyndaquil unfortunately gets wrecked by Shiftry, not without causing some damage to it. Then we would get to see the return of Heracross. Heracross, I think, at this point, could be strong enough to actually battle Shiftry and take it out. I mean, it's a fighting type. It would know Brick Break at this point, and it would also know Mega Horn being half bug, so why not? Then it would also come the battle with Venusaur. Here, Ash would have to go with Heracross against Venusaur. He tried it in the original and failed, so he's going to have to go again. Unfortunately, the result will still be the same. This would leave Ash to use Sceptile. Now, I know what you're thinking. This puts Ash at a disadvantage. I could have just thrown Latias in here. Ash doesn't want to use Latias all the time. And this episode was more about Sceptile than anything else, so we're just going to leave Sceptile as the main focus. And I think that even though Sceptile is technically at a type disadvantage here against Venusaur, I still think it can pull out a win. And that's because there's going to be a new move that Ash decided to teach Sceptile here. Something that he didn't think about until he got to the Battle Frontier. Aerial Ace. This would give Ash a move that can fight back against fighting types and other grass types. This would allow Sceptile to have a slight edge against Venusaur and to take it out. Now, what move will we replace with Aerial Ace? Well, I think it's quite simple actually. Quick Attack. So that would leave Sceptile's current moveset at Dragon's Breath, Leaf Blade, Giga Drain, and Aerial Ace. And that would also change one other major thing. It wouldn't be getting Solar Beam here. As a matter of fact, I think with Giga Drain against a Claydol, Sceptile would kind of just one-shot it, if not take it out in a couple of moves. Especially if it's able to get in close. And Sceptile is fast enough without quick attack for that to happen. And because it's been in its third stage evolution for a long time now, it would be really acclimated to its power, and Ash and its synchronicity would be very on point. So there's no point in really dragging this out. That would lock in Ash's 5th frontier symbol. Then we come to the prodigy herself, Annabelle, the psychic type wielder. The one who can communicate with her Pokemon without having to say words. I will say here that this is going to go down the same way as it did in the anime. You see, in the anime, she used Alakazam, Espeon, and Metagross, and Ash used Corphish, Tauros, and Pikachu. Now, while Ash won't have Corphish, he'll have Latias, so we'll make that change for the battle as well. I do still think that Annabelle has a lot to offer here, because it explores something that Ash and Latias have not done yet. And that's the fact that Ash and Latias could potentially link their minds to make their attacks stronger. And that would be a good training arc after Ash loses his first battle with her. So instead we would have Tauros, and we'd have Latias, and we'd have Pikachu. And even though she is a legendary, it would still give Ash another reason to have it around, and another bridge for them to cross together. This would lead into the rematch where we'd end up seeing Tauros tying with Metagross, and then Latias would go one-on-one with Alakazam, and at this point, it would just be who's the stronger Psychic type. And honestly, I think that Latias would shine here. Ash has an unnatural ability to link with this Pokemon rather quickly, and even though she's been doing it a while, Latias being with Ash as long as it has, it's just like second nature with the two. And they've always shared that psychic link. So the battle would go on pretty quickly, and Latias would end up taking out Alakazam. This would lead Ash into having 2 versus Espeon. And quite frankly, I don't really see how Espeon would be able to win. I mean, Latias has a far better stat base than it. And not only that, but the experiences that Ash has had to this point, it would make things a little bit easier for him, especially now that he's picked up on Annabelle's trick. That would mean that this battle would end up being won either with Pikachu or Latias. I could see Ash interchanging between the two, and that could make for an interesting battle. That would also keep Annabelle off her game because she wouldn't be able to synchronize with Espeon like normal. That would lock in Ash's 6th frontier symbol. Now, let's get on to the final frontier symbol. That would be the symbol and the frontier brain of Brandon. I like Brandon. He's my favorite of the frontier brains. I think he is actually a champion level trainer. That's why he's the last of the frontier brains. But I have a huge problem with how they portrayed him in the anime. And not necessarily him, it's portrayed Ash against him. The whole rule of you can only challenge 3 times, and then after that you can't challenge anymore, while I think it's a fair rule, the first loss Ash had was bull. We all know it. Possessed by an evil king, and Regirock ended up taking down Sceptile. Ash wasn't really himself, but it still counted toward his frontier challenges at the Battle Pyramid. It was dumb. It really was. But they needed a way to make it believable that Ash would lose there. I think in canon, honestly, Ash could have still taken Regirock with Sceptile. Simple as that. And here, it would be the same. It would be the fact that Ash has had Sceptile for such a long time that he knows it inside and out. Honestly, he would just speed run the Battle Pyramid and take Brandon's Regirock out. Like that. But we're not going to take that route. Instead, we're going to make this a 2-on-2 for their first battle. And we're going to say that Brandon has both Regirock and Registeel. Remember, he hasn't quite acquired Regice yet. But with that being said, Ash would still end up choosing Sceptile against Brandon's Regirock. And just like I said before, I think that Sceptile would end up taking it. Fairly easy. Sceptile has already proven that it's had amazing endurance, even in the canon and in this what if. Sceptile has access to Giga Drain here, so it can restore its health. I don't see Regirock being able to take down Sceptile. Registeel, on the other hand, that is a different story. And I think that is where the first battle would differ. Because Ash has to face Registeel, he doesn't really have a proper type on his team to face it. But because it is a Steel type, I think this will be the time to unveil Ash's newest Pokemon and his newest evolution, Donphan. So Ash would end up pinning Donphan against Registeel here. And I would say that Donphan happened to evolve right around the time he got to the 6th battle facility, I'd say. So he's had it for a little while, but it's nowhere near as strong as it was in canon. And unfortunately, that choice ends up costing Ash, forcing him to have to go back to the drawing board to face Brendan for a second time. Now, the second time I think would be a much more different outing. He would want to go for a 3-on-3. This time, I think he would use both of his Reggies, and then we could throw in one of his randos from the 4-on-4 he had with Ash, and I think it could be something as simple as maybe Ninjask. And Ash, in this time, he would end up having to make a call for an old friend. We all know who the old friend is, but I still think that he would end up using Sceptile here against Regirock. This time, though, Brandon would have a better understanding of Sceptile's abilities, and though Regirock would still lose in a contest of typing, it would be a lot closer. This would end up forcing out Ninjask, which Ninjask does have a type advantage against Sceptile. This would also allow Brandon to take advantage of the fact that Sceptile just had a very hard battle with his Regirock, and he would be able to take it down pretty quickly. This would then spark Ash to make his next choice. And I think here, Ash would end up sending in Swellow to battle Ninjask. While Ninjask is a powerful opponent, and it does have the ability Speed Boost, I think Swellow would still be able to take it here, with a couple of well-timed aerial aces because it's got the type advantage, leaving Brendan with just one Pokemon, which is Registeel. Unfortunately, Swellow can't crack Steel. It's proved that before when it faced Metagross, and it's going to prove it again here, as it just simply gets batted aside with the Metal Claw and leveled into the 4. So yeah, that would leave Ash with his last Pokemon. And I think at this point, we would unveil the old friend, and it would be Torkoal. Torkoal is already stronger than in canon at this point. We gave it Heat Wave while it was in Holland. And I think a good measurement to prove that Torkoal had been leveling up while it was at Professor Oak's house is the fact that it learned Heat Wave while it was there. I think that means that it would be slightly stronger here. Now, with all that being said, I still don't think Torkoal is the absolute rock star that we would want him to be here. He would prove to be a challenge for Registeel, and would even push it closer to feigning. But I still don't think it would be able to take it here, and I think it would fall. This would lead Ash into his third challenge of the Battle Pyramid, and the final challenge that he can do. I think here that instead of a 4-on-4, it would be a 5-on-5. Because now at this point, Brendan has Regirock, and I think, honestly, he would use all three of his legendaries. Ash has proven time and time again that he is inching closer and closer to Brendan's skill level. So he would want to make sure that he pushes Ash as hard as he can, which is fully within Brendan's character. And the last Pokemon I think it would use would be Dusclops, because I want to give a little bit of revenge here for what they did to Charizard in the anime. But anyway, with that being said, Ash has to choose 5 members now. I think that he would still go with his original 4. Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Charizard, and Squirtle. And then for number 5, we would throw Old Faithful on there, Latias. So that gives Ash a pretty stacked team with experience. He's holding nothing back in this battle. And honestly, I can foresee it playing out kind of similar as in the anime. Not so much as the order that they were chosen, but Pikachu would end up taking the win. It's more along the lines of the road we used to get there. For instance, I think it would start off, instead of Dusclops versus Charizard, it would be Dusclops versus Latias. And it'd be at this point that Brandon learns that Ash has a Latias, which intrigues him. The fact that he could bond with a super rare legendary Pokemon like Latias is something that Brandon is very, very, very interested in. But he saves that for later. The battle here would kind of play out similar to how it did with Charizard, with Latias getting confused and stuff like that. But the bond between Lash and Latias is what comes into play here. And because there's no fighting type move involved, I think that Latias would be able to take this. The next Pokemon that Brandon would end up sending out would be Solrock. And here, I think Ash would recall Latias for later, and he would end up sending in Squirtle. Squirtle is one of Ash's best battlers, and honestly, I don't think it would really struggle against Solrock. Solrock would probably end up getting leveled in 1 or 2, maybe 3 moves here. Now, we get to the heavy hitters. Brandon, not wanting to keep things the same and wanting to throw Ash off, ends up sending in Registeel, which is exactly what he wanted because Ash was expecting Regirock, because he led with Regirock the last 2 times. But regardless, this is where Ash decides to make the move to send in Charizard. After all, at this point, both Latias and Squirtle have battled, and he would want to try and save them for as long as he could. Charizard, however, is going to have its hands full. At this point in time, it is Ash's strongest fire type, and it has taken down its share of legendaries, or battled with them at least, but that doesn't mean that taking out Registeel is going to be an easy task. And unfortunately, as much as I hate to do this, I think Registeel would still manage to beat Charizard here, because I feel like Brandon would have Rock Tomb on Registeel, which is 4 times effective against Charizard. Well, that means that one of Ash's super heavy hitters is done for. Although Charizard didn't go out without a fight, and Registeel's been roasted for it. Now at this point, Ash just has to put in some damage. This is where he decides to put in Pikachu. And Pikachu is able to get in there quick and light it up with the Thunderbolt, dropping the Iron Behemoth and giving Ash his first win over a Reggie. Next would come in Regirock. This is where Ash would recall Pikachu, and he would lead with Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur is a very adept battler. It has a mastery over its Vine Whips, and it's pretty well versed in some fighting types, as been shown in previous episodes of the anime. But what I think gives Bulbasaur the major advantage here is that it's small. Small and fast. And this would allow it to outpace Regirock and be 2 to 3 steps ahead of it. Unfortunately, Bulbasaur would end up falling, because not even Bulbasaur's small stature can avoid a lock-on Hyper Beam combo. And unfortunately, we would see a struggle between Solar Beam and Hyper Beam here, to where Bulbasaur comes out the losers. This would have Ash send back in Squirtle. I think at this point that Squirtle would be able to put in enough work to at least take down Regirock, although it did come at a cost because it did get enveloped with another Hyper Beam. Fortunately for Squirtle though, it has the ability to withdraw in a shell, so the damage was cut in half just about. After Regirock falls, that leaves Brandon with Regice. Now Regice is probably the strongest out of Brandon's 3 Reggies as depicted in the anime. And with that being said, Ash would want to keep in Squirtle here, just to try and do some damage. Unfortunately, it doesn't really last that long, so Squirtle gets taken out rather quick. Knowing that it's either Latias or Pikachu at this point, Ash decides that he's going to send back in Latias. He knows that Ice-type moves are his weakness, but he's going to do his best. Unfortunately, this does make one of Latias' moves in Dragon Breath a little bit redundant, because it's not going to really cause any damage. However, Latias is able to cause some decent damage with a few Luster Purges and even a Dragon Breath, even though Ash knew that it wouldn't do that much. But however, the Dragon's Breath has one effect that happens before Latias falls. It does manage to lock in a paralysis, and that's going to be a huge win for Ash and Pikachu, because as Latias gets recalled, Pikachu gets sent back in. The Electric Mouse now has to topple this Iceberg legendary. In the anime, it took a lot, and it was honestly a stroke of luck that Pikachu did it, but it did. Here, however, with Latias being around, Pikachu's going to be stronger, and it's going to be faster, and it's going to make things a little bit easier. Don't get me wrong, there's still going to be a struggle there, and it's going to be a couple of moments like Pikachu getting frozen in ice and it having to break its way out, but I think in the end, with the well-placed Iron Tail, Ash would still be able to take out Regice. This would bring Ash's Frontier run to an end, as he finally secures his 7th Frontier symbol. Now this is going to leave Ash with a choice. Scott's going to give him an offer to become a Frontier Brain. Or does Ash choose to continue his adventures and head to the next region, that is Sinnoh? I'm going to leave that up to you. And this is how we're going to do it. once this video is over, there's going to be a poll that's live, and you guys are going to make the choice, which means that there's going to be 2 videos that are going to be made, and whatever the poll wins is going to be the one that gets released tomorrow. The other one, however, and the scenario that plays out with that, I'm going to be putting it up on Patreon and the YouTube channel members so they can view it. But with that being said, you guys head over there and make your decision. But first, let me know your thoughts on this part. How do you feel about Latias and the role that it played in the Battle Frontier? Do you think it had a much more profound impact than the original? Do you think the way Ash traveled through the frontier was acceptable? Or do you feel like it should have been different somehow? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, don't forget to follow me on my other social medias or in my other platforms, Patreon, YouTube channel membership, all that stuff. Anything you guys donate to help me create more content is always appreciated. But with that being said, we're going to sign out the video the best way we know how, in thanking the sponsors, the patrons. Because as of the time of shooting this, I don't have any YouTube members because I haven't made the announcement yet. Silverheart Soul, Robert, Vegito Gaming 78, Andrew McCartney, Holosiv, Julian Rodriguez, Ruben Watson, Lord Explosion Murder, Assassin 139, Flyer 943, Shadow Dragon, Tavern Landlord, K McKnight, Drax, True Vault, Dalen Silva, Fox King, Dalian Poteet, Warren E. Taylor, Plus Ultraman, Mike Logan, Megar, Team Valor, Kendall Green, and Earth Dragon. Thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow. And don't forget to make your choice, because the future is riding on it.